Hi there, my name is Kylie, and welcome to World War I Part 2. In this video, you'll learn how the war was fought, what trench warfare was like, what weapons were used, and how the ending of World War I helped create tension that led to the next great war, World War II. World War I was fought mainly with a tactic called trench warfare. Trench warfare involves the digging of miles and miles of long holes in the ground in order for soldiers to avoid being seen and shot by the enemy. These miles of ditches were dug by hand. It is estimated that if you connected all the trenches dug during World War I, they would be 25,000 miles long. This is just about the same as the circumference of the Earth. Soldiers lived in these trenches. It was a horrible and dirty existence. Trenches were dug out of mud and were often wet and filled with water. Soldiers lived with rats, mice, frogs, lice, biting flies, and other pests. Rats were the biggest problem because they ate the soldiers' food and bit the soldiers while they slept. Lice was also a constant problem, biting the soldiers and spreading diseases. There were not any bathrooms, and the soldiers had to try and use buckets to remove their own waste. Trench foot was a disease many soldiers caught because they were standing in the filthy trenches, sometimes in a foot of water for days on end. This caused really bad infections, and many soldiers had to have one or both feet removed by a doctor. This is called amputation. The biggest difference between the weapons used in World War I compared to previous wars was the machine gun. Machine guns enable soldiers to rapidly shoot many rounds of ammunition without the need to pause and reload. As a result, many soldiers were killed by machine gun fire when they ran out of their trenches and tried to attack the enemy. Trench warfare led to very large and drawn-out battles. Two of the largest battles of World War I took place in France. These battles were the Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme, where 1 million soldiers lost their lives in each of the two battles. Imagine, the United States military these days has between 1 and 1.5 million active soldiers, so the number of soldiers killed in these two major battles in World War I is higher than the number of active U.S. soldiers today. The battles in World War I were unbelievably brutal and deadly and brought pain and sorrow to millions of families who lost their loved ones. World War I was long and a difficult war. Many lives were lost, including over 100,000 Americans. The war ended on November 11, 1918, when Germany and the Central Powers agreed to an armistice, which means that both sides agreed to stop fighting. And the fighting came to an end at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. This date went on to be called Armistice Day, which we now celebrate as Veterans Day on the 11th of November of each year. At the time of the armistice, the Allies had gained a lot of ground and were in a much stronger position compared to the Central Powers. So, when the leaders of the Allies signed the official peace treaty in the Palace of Versailles in France on June 19, 1919, they dictated harsh and humiliating conditions for the Central Powers. The large Austrian-Hungary Empire that had been a strong power in Europe for over 500 years was broken apart and split into several independent countries. Germany was forced to accept the responsibility for all losses and damage caused by the war and had to pay large sums of money to the Allies. This was called paying reparations. Reparations are payments to compensate a victim for injustice or wrongdoing. Germany also was forbidden to ever create a standing army again. With this, the Allies wanted to make sure that Germany would never be able to start a large war again. But sadly, they failed to achieve that goal. Many Germans believed that they were treated unfairly, and they grew increasingly angry at the Allies. This paved the way for an even bigger tragedy in human history, World War II. You have just learned about how World War I was fought, what trench warfare was, what weapons were used, and how the ending of World War I helped create tension that led to the next great war, World War II. Be sure to watch the other U.S. history videos. To keep learning about U.S. history and other social studies related topics, be sure to check out our exciting online games and quizzes. And remember to always be clever.
Hey, hey.